People wonder when trade really started. It's a big question. And it doesn't have a simple answer like a specific date or a single moment. You see, trade didn't just pop up overnight, it grew slowly. It changed over thousands and thousands of years. It's part of what makes us human. We can look back a long way, much further back than money or big markets. We can look at how early humans lived and what they needed and what they did with things they found. This helps us understand the very first bits of trade. It's a story about needs and smart thinking and making friends, and sometimes just wanting something pretty. So, what is trade really? At its heart, it's just swapping things. You have something I want, and I have something you want. Where we exchange, it's not always about money. In the old days, there was no money. It was about goods for goods, or maybe goods for services, like I'll give you some berries, and you give me that sharp stone axe. Or I'll help you hunt, and you help me build a shelter. This exchange had to feel fair enough to both people. It had to make sense for everyone involved. But it's more than just a quick swap. Trade means there's a reason for it. Maybe one person has something in abundance. Maybe another person has a scarcity, and they meet up, they agree to exchange. This implies a bit of planning. It implies some talking, or at least some understanding. It's about getting things you don't have yourself, by giving away things you do have. Before we even get to what most people call trade, we need to think about reciprocity. This is a fancy word. It just means giving and expecting something back, not always right away. Sometimes much later. This kind of sharing is very old, it's how families work. It's how small groups of people, like a tribe, work. Imagine a small group of early humans. They live together, they hunt together, they gather food together. If one person finds a lot of food, they share it. They share it with their family, they share it with their friends. They do this because they are related. They do it because they trust each other. They do it because they know that one day they might need help too. And then others will share it with them. This isn't trade in a market sense. Nobody is saying, I'll give you this much meat for that many berries. It's more like, we are family. We help each other. This builds strong bonds. It builds trust. It makes a group stronger. It means everyone has a better chance of surviving. This sharing is like the very first step towards trade. It teaches people to give things away. It teaches them to expect something in return, even if that return is just good feelings or a promise of future help. Gift giving is another big part of this. Giving gifts can be a way to show status. It can be a way to make alliances. If I give you a beautiful shell necklace, maybe you feel obligated to help me later. Or maybe you just feel friendly towards me. This isn't trade either, but it creates a network of relationship. It sets up expectations. It creates a social currency. It makes people think about what they have and what others might value. Delayed reciprocity is a powerful idea. I'll help you hunt today, you help me tomorrow. This needs memory, it needs trust, it needs an understanding of the future. Our ancient ancestors were good at this. They knew that working together made life easier. They knew that helping others meant they would be helped in return. This thinking is crucial. It lays the groundwork for actual trade. It teaches us about value, it teaches us about mutual benefit. So, when did this simple sharing turn into something more like trade? This is where archaeologists come in. They dig things up, they look for clues, and the biggest clue for early trade is simple objects found far from where they came from. Think about stone tools. Early humans needed tools. They used stones for cutting, scraping, chopping. Some stones are better than others. Obsidian, for example, is a volcanic glass. It's super sharp when flaked, it makes amazing tools, but obsidian is only found in certain places. Not everywhere. Homo habilis and Homo erectus were early humans. They lived millions of years ago. They made simple stone tools. We find these tools at their sites. Sometimes the stone they used came from quite far away, dozens of miles away. How did it get there? This is a tricky question. Did one early human carry the stone all the way? Just because they knew where to find good stone, or did they get it from another group? Did they swap something for it? It's hard to tell. We don't have written records from then. We only have the stones themselves. For many archaeologists, just finding a stone far from its source isn't proof of trade. It could be that the group moved around a lot. They might have picked up the stone, used it, and then moved on. Or maybe they just went on a long journey together, they brought it back themselves. This is called direct procurement. It's not trade, it's just getting things for yourself. But what if the stone is found hundreds of miles away, and what if other types of stone from other distant places are also found at the same site? This makes direct procurement less likely. It would mean groups traveled vast distances just for stone. That seems a bit inefficient. It makes more sense that the stone moved from group to group. It's like a game of ancient telephone. One group gets it, they use some, they pass some to the next group. They get something in return. This is called down the line exchange. It's a very early form of trade. It's not a market, but it's not direct travel either. The earliest clear signs of this kind of long distance movement of materials go back a very long time. Around 1.7 to 2 million years ago. In East Africa, sites like Olduvai Gorge and Lake Turkana show evidence of stone types moved over 50 miles. This is a significant distance for early hominins. It suggests some planning. It suggests they valued specific kinds of stone. They needed it for their tools. But it gets more interesting as we move closer to modern humans. Think about Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. They lived more recently, around 300,000 years ago, and even up to 40,000 years ago. These groups were smarter. They had more complex cultures. They had more varied needs. Now we start seeing things beyond just stone tools. We see decorative items. Things like shell beads and pigments, especially ochre. Ochre is a red earth. It was used for body paint. It was used for cave art. It was used for tanning hides. It had many uses, and it was often found in specific locations. Shell beads are a big clue. We find seashells at sites far, far inland, hundreds of miles from the coast. How did they get there? Did someone walk all the way to the ocean, collect shells, and walk all the way back? Maybe sometimes, but when we see many shells from different ocean sources at one inland site, it points to exchange. It points to trade. For example, sites in Africa, like Blombos Cave, show very old shell beads. These are from around 75,000 years ago. These beads are small. They were drilled. They were worn as jewelry. And the type of shell itself can sometimes be traced to specific coastal areas. When these shells are found far from their natural habitat, it's strong evidence that they were moved. They were valued. They were likely exchanged. Ochre is another good example. Early humans used a lot of ochre. We find ochre mines that were exploited, and then we find ochre, sometimes from those specific mines, at sites far away. This movement of a non-essential item like a decorative shell or pigment for art is a stronger sign of trade than just moving stone for tools. Because a tool is a necessity. A pretty shell is something extra. If you go to great lengths to get something extra, it suggests a more complex reason. It suggests a social reason, or an exchange reason. Neanderthals are a good case study. For a long time, people thought Neanderthals were simple, not as smart as Homo sapiens. But evidence keeps piling up. They used obsidian, they used shells, they even used amber. Amber is fossilized tree sap. It's pretty. It can be found in certain regions like around the Baltic Sea. Finding amber far from the Baltic suggests it moved. It moved between Neanderthal groups. Or maybe even between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. This doesn't mean Neanderthals had open air markets. It means they likely participated in down-the-line exchange. They swapped things with their neighbors. And those neighbors swapped with their neighbors, and so on. So things could travel quite far. This shows they understood value. They understood the benefit of getting something they didn't have. So why did trade start? What were the big reasons? First, and most obviously, access to resources. Not every place has everything. Some places have good stone, other places have salt. Others have good hunting grounds, still others have specific types of wood or plant medicines. If you can't get something locally, you have two choices: go get it yourself or get it from someone else. Getting it from someone else is trade. It's often easier, safer, and more efficient. Second, trade helps with specialization. This is a bit more advanced, but the seeds were there. If I'm really good at making sharp stone tools, and you're really good at tanning animal hides, we both benefit if I make extra tools and you make extra hides. Then we can swap. I get a good hide for warmth, you get a good tool for hunting. We both have better quality goods than if we tried to do everything ourselves. This makes a group more productive, it makes them more skilled. Third, trade helps reduce risk. Imagine your local hunt fails, or your local berry patch doesn't produce. If you have relationships with other groups, you might be able to trade for food. This spreads out the risk. It means you're less likely to starve if your own immediate resources fail. It builds resilience. It's like an ancient insurance policy. Fourth, trade builds social bonds. When you trade with another group, you get to know them. You build trust. You create a relationship. This can prevent conflict. It can lead to alliances. It can mean that in times of trouble, you have friends to turn to. It's not just about goods, it's about people. Fifth, trade helps spread ideas and information. When goods move from group to group, so do people. or at least the knowledge of other people moves. You learn new ways of making tools, you learn new stories, you learn about other places. This exchange of ideas is just as valuable as the exchange of goods. It helps human culture evolve. It helps us learn and adapt. And sixth, trade can be about status and prestige. Having rare or beautiful items signals something. It says, I am important, or my group is connected. Exchanging these items can elevate a person's standing. It can show power. This adds a social layer to the purely practical benefits. How did this early trade actually happen? In the very beginning, it was almost certainly barter, through direct exchange, no money involved. I give you this, you give me that. The value of things would have been negotiated, or would have been understood based on scarcity, usefulness, and effort. We also hear about silent trade in later, more complex societies. This is where one group leaves goods in a spot. Then they leave. Another group comes, inspects the goods, and leaves something they think is fair in return. Then they leave. The first group comes back. If they like what's offered, they take it. If not, they wait. This is a way to trade without direct interaction. It reduces risk of conflict. But it's probably not how the very earliest trade happened. That likely needed at least some direct interaction. Even if just gestures and simple sounds, long-distance networks develop slowly. At first, goods might just pass from one neighboring group to the next, like a bucket brigade. This is the down-the-line model. Over many hands, an object could travel very far. Later, as societies became more organized, some individuals or small groups might have specialized in traveling to specific resource locations. They might have become early traders, but this is much later. The ability to trade needs a few key human traits. One is language. You need to be able to communicate what you want and what you're willing to give. You need to agree on terms. Simple language helps. Complex language helps even more. It allows for more complex agreements. Another trait is theory of mind. This means understanding that other people have their own thoughts, feelings, and desires. You need to be able to put yourself in another person's shoes to figure out what they might want. To understand their motivations, this helps you make a good deal. It helps you build trust. Homo sapiens clearly had these abilities. Neanderthals probably had them too, to some extent. So, when did true trade really emerge? When does it become more than just occasional swapping or down-the-line resource movement? Most people would point to the Upper Paleolithic. This is when modern Homo sapiens were well established, roughly 50,000 to 10,000 years ago. During this period, we see much wider and more consistent distribution of exotic materials. Things like Baltic amber are found all over Europe. Specific types of shells are found across vast distances. This suggests more established networks. It suggests more deliberate movement of goods. We also see more standardized tools. This means people were becoming better at making specific things. It hints at early forms of specialization. If you're really good at making one kind of tool, you might make extra. Then you could swap them for other things. The social structures of these early Homo sapiens were more complex. They had larger groups, they had more sophisticated symbolic behavior. This would have supported more robust trade networks. Trade became a way to connect these more complex societies. It became a way to get the goods they needed and wanted. But the biggest turning point for trade, the moment it truly became central to human society, was the Neolithic Revolution. This happened roughly 10,000 to 5,000 years ago. This is when humans started farming. They started domesticating animals. They stopped being nomadic hunter-gatherers. They settled down. Farming brought a huge change food surpluses. For the first time, people could grow more food than they immediately needed. This meant not everyone had to be a farmer. Some people could specialize. They could become potters. They could become weavers, they could become toolmakers. This leads to a massive increase in goods that can be traded. And because people were settled, they lived in permanent villages and towns. This made trade much easier. You didn't have to chase after nomadic groups. You knew where people were. This allowed for the development of early markets, places where people could regularly meet to exchange goods. Consider early towns like Katahoyuk in modern-day Turkey. This town existed around 9,000 years ago. It was a large, bustling settlement. We find clear evidence of extensive trade networks here. They imported obsidian from distant volcanoes. They imported shells from the Mediterranean Sea. They imported timber and other raw materials. They were trading their own goods, perhaps woven textiles or processed foods, for these imports. Trade was not just happening. It was essential to their way of life. It made the town possible. The obsidian trade in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, is a famous example. Specific obsidian sources were exploited for thousands of years. The obsidian moved along well-established routes. It reached settlements hundreds of miles away. This was not just accidental movement. This was a sophisticated system of exchange. It shows that by the Neolithic period, trade was a fundamental part of human economic and social life. So, when did humans first start to trade? There isn't one single date. It was a gradual process. It started with very simple forms of resource movement. Then it evolved into reciprocity and gift giving within and between groups. These created the social and psychological foundations. Then, as human intelligence and social complexity grew, especially with Homo sapiens, we see clearer evidence of systematic exchange. Things like shell beads and specific types of stone moving over long distances. And, finally, with the advent of agriculture and settled life, trade became a central, organized, and essential part of human society. It grew from simple needs to complex networks that shaped our world. It's a continuous spectrum, really. From one person sharing a piece of meat with a family member, to a hunter-gatherer group swapping a special stone with a neighboring group, to a farmer exchanging grain for pottery, all the way to our massive global markets today. Trade is deeply embedded in who we are. It helped us survive, it helped us connect. And it built the very fabric of our societies.